She's old anyway. The brother who chose money over mom. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 38, and I always believed family comes first. My younger brother David and I grew up in a modest home where our single mother, Elena, sacrificed everything to give us opportunities she never had. When she got sick at 67, I never imagined the conversation that would shatter my faith in the person I'd shared a childhood with. If you're watching this and struggling with family members who've disappointed you when it mattered most, stay with me. Drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe because this story might give you the strength to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. Growing up, David and I were inseparable. Mom worked double shifts at the textile factory to keep us fed and clothed, coming home exhausted but always finding energy to help with homework or listen to our problems. She never complained, never made us feel like burdens, even when I know we stretched every dollar she earned. David was the baby, 3 years younger than me, and I naturally fell into the protective older sister role. When he struggled in school, I tutored him. When kids picked on him for his secondhand clothes, I stood up to them. When he wanted to quit high school to work, I convinced him to stay, even offering to help with his expenses. Our paths diverged after graduation. I went to community college, then transferred to state university, working multiple jobs to pay my way through. David had different priorities. He was charming, always knew how to talk his way into opportunities, and by his mid-20s had built a successful contracting business. Nothing wrong with that. I was proud of his success. But somewhere along the way, David changed. The money and status went to his head. He bought a big house in the suburbs, drove luxury cars, took expensive vacations. And slowly, his visits to mom became less frequent, his calls shorter, his patience thinner. I stayed close to home, working as a nurse at the regional hospital. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and it kept me near mom. As she aged, I noticed the little things. How she moved more carefully, how she sometimes forgot words mid-sentence, how she'd grown quieter about her health concerns. When I asked about doctor visits, she'd wave me off. "Don't worry about an old woman's aches and pains," she'd say with that stubborn smile I knew so well. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. Mom had collapsed at the grocery store and was being rushed to the hospital where I worked. I met the ambulance in the emergency bay, my heart pounding as I saw her pale face, oxygen mask covering the features that had comforted me through every childhood crisis. The doctors ran tests throughout the day. Advanced heart failure, they said. Diabetes complications, kidney dysfunction, a cascade of health issues that had been silently progressing while she suffered alone, not wanting to burden her children. "She needs immediate intervention," Dr. Peterson explained to David and me in the family consultation room. "Cardiac catheterization, possible bypass surgery, intensive diabetes management. Without treatment, we're looking at months, maybe weeks." The cost estimates made my head spin. Even with Medicare, the out-of-pocket expenses would be enormous. Specialized care, medications, potential long-term assistance, easily $60,000 to $80,000. That evening, David and I sat in the hospital cafeteria, picking at sandwiches neither of us wanted. "We need to talk about Mom's care," I said, pulling out the folder of medical estimates and insurance information I'd been gathering all day. David glanced at the papers, his expression hardening. "Sarah, you know I'd help if I could, but business has been tight. The economy, and Lisa's been wanting to remodel the kitchen." His voice trailed off as he mentioned his wife's home improvement plans. "David, this is Mom's life we're talking about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know it's a lot of money, but between both of us we can make it work. I've already looked into refinancing my house, and I can pick up extra shifts." He interrupted me with a wave of his hand. "Look, Sarah, I get that you're emotional about this, but we need to be realistic. She's old anyway. How many good years does she really have left? Is it worth bankrupting ourselves for someone who's already lived their life?" The words hit me like a physical blow. She's old anyway. I stared at my brother, searching his face for any sign that he didn't mean what he'd just said. But his expression remained cold, calculating. This was our mother, the woman who'd worked her fingers to the bone for us, who'd never taken a real vacation because she was saving for our college funds, who still sent us both birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside for something special. She's our mother, David, I whispered, my voice breaking. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. And I'm grateful for that, I really am. But sentiment doesn't pay bills. Look, you're the nurse in the family. You know how these things go. We throw all this money at treatment. She suffers through surgeries and procedures. And for what? Maybe an extra year or two of declining quality of life? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you're just going to let her die? I'm being practical, he snapped. Something you've never been good at. You always let your emotions cloud your judgment. He stood up, straightening his expensive suit jacket. I'm sorry, Sarah, but I can't help with this. Lisa and I have our own future to think about. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a decision that would define the next chapter of my life. I would cover Mom's medical expenses myself, whatever it took. I refinanced my house, cashed out my retirement savings, and took on every extra shift the hospital would give me. I worked 16-hour days, sometimes sleeping in the on-call room rather than going home. I sold my car and bought an older model, canceled subscriptions, stopped eating out, did everything I could to stretch every dollar toward Mom's care. The treatments began immediately. Mom was scared but tried to hide it behind her usual stoic facade. Sarah, honey, you don't have to do all this for me, she'd say, as I sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand through another round of testing. Yes, I do, I'd reply simply. You did it for us. I never told her about David's refusal to help. What would be the point? It would only break her heart to know that the son she'd bragged about to anyone who'd listen had written her off as not worth the investment. David visited exactly twice during Mom's 3-month treatment period. Both times he stayed less than an hour, checking his phone constantly, making excuses about work commitments. Mom's face would light up when he walked in, then fall when he left so quickly. He's so busy with his business, she'd say to me afterward, always making excuses for him. I understand why he can't visit more often. The treatments were working, at least initially. Mom's heart function improved, her diabetes stabilized, and she regained some of her energy. We had precious months together that wouldn't have been possible without the medical intervention David had dismissed as pointless. She was able to see her first grandchild, my daughter Emma, take her first steps. She taught Emma to bake her famous chocolate chip cookies, passing down recipes I'd been too busy to learn before. She finished the quilt she'd been working on for years, each square telling a story of our family's history. But the underlying conditions were too advanced. By autumn, it was clear that we'd bought time, not a cure. Mom's decline was gradual but steady. I arranged for home hospice care, taking extended leave from work to be with her. David's visits became even rarer, and when he did come, Mom was often too weak to fully appreciate his presence. She died on a quiet November morning, holding my hand as sunlight streamed through her bedroom window. Her last words were about how grateful she was for the extra time we'd had together, how much it meant to her that someone had fought for her life. I didn't tell her about the financial cost, about the debt I'd accumulated, about the sleepless nights I'd spent worrying about money. None of that mattered in those final moments. The funeral was small but beautiful. I'd handled all the arrangements, of course, though David did show up in his expensive black suit and spoke briefly about what a wonderful mother Elena had been. Several people commented on how lucky she was to have had such devoted children. I smiled and nodded, not correcting their assumption that both of us had been equally devoted. 3 weeks after the funeral, David called. Sarah, we need to talk about Mom's estate. I almost laughed at his timing. There wasn't much of an estate, the small house Mom had owned, a modest savings account, and her jewelry collection. Nothing valuable by David's standards, but pieces full of sentimental value. Her wedding ring from our father, who died when we were teenagers. The pearl necklace her mother had given her. The gold bracelet she'd bought herself with her first paycheck from the factory job. I think we should split everything 50-50, David said when we met at Mom's house to go through her belongings. He was already eyeing the jewelry box, probably calculating the resale value. That's fair, right? Equal shares for both children. I looked at my brother, this man who shared my DNA but seemed like a stranger, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Actually, David, there's something I need to show you first, I said, walking to Mom's dresser. During her final weeks, when she was drifting in and out of consciousness, Mom had pressed a small envelope into my hands. "Only give this to the one who stood by me," she'd whispered. At the time, I'd assumed she meant it should be opened after her death, perhaps a final message for both of us. I handed the envelope to David, watching his face as he recognized Mom's handwriting on the outside. His name was written there, but underneath, in Mom's careful script, were the words, "Only if he proves himself worthy." David's expression shifted from confusion to something approaching unease as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter, written in Mom's shaking handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before her death. "My dear David, if you are reading this, it means Sarah has decided you deserve to know the truth. I know about your refusal to help with my medical care. I know you told your sister I was old anyway and not worth the investment. I know you chose your kitchen remodel over your mother's life. I want you to understand that the months I gained because of Sarah's sacrifice were the most precious of my life. I got to hold my granddaughter, finish my quilt, and say proper goodbyes. These were gifts your sister gave me by choosing love over money, sacrifice over selfishness. The jewelry you're so eager to claim? It goes to the child who stood by me. Sarah has earned every piece through her devotion, her sleepless nights, her financial sacrifice, and her love. You have earned nothing but my disappointment. I loved you, David, but love isn't enough when it's not returned in kind. I hope someday you'll understand what you chose when you chose money over your mother's life. Elena." The silence that followed was deafening. David's face went through a series of changes, confusion, shock, then a deep pallor as the full weight of Mom's words sank in. His hands trembled as he set the letter down on the dresser. She knew?" he whispered. I nodded. "Mom was a lot sharper than you gave her credit for. She overheard you talking to Lisa on the phone one day when you thought she was asleep. You were bragging about how you'd avoided getting stuck with her medical bills." David looked around the room, probably seeing it differently now. Not as assets to be divided, but as the sanctuary where our mother had spent her final months, surrounded by love from one child, while the other counted the cost of caring. "Sarah, he started, then stopped. What could he possibly say? "The jewelry stays with me," I said firmly, "along with everything else. Mom made her wishes clear." David's businessman instincts kicked in. "You can't just take everything. There are legal procedures, estate laws." "Feel free to contest it," I replied calmly. "But you'll be fighting our mother's written wishes, and I have documentation of every penny I spent on her care while you were remodeling your kitchen. How do you think that will look to a judge?" The fight went out of him then. He slumped into Mom's reading chair, looking smaller somehow despite his expensive clothes. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," he said quietly. The money seemed so huge, and I thought—" "You thought she wasn't worth it," I finished. "You thought her life had less value than your comfort, and now you have to live with that choice." David left that day without taking anything. He never contested the estate, never mentioned legal action again. We see each other occasionally at family gatherings, but the easy relationship we'd once shared is gone forever. He's never apologized, never acknowledged what his choice cost, not just Mom's comfort in her final months, but our relationship as siblings. I kept Mom's jewelry, not because of its monetary value, but because each piece carries a story. When I wear her pearl necklace, I remember the woman who worked double shifts to buy it for herself, after years of putting everyone else first. When I look at her wedding ring, I think about the love story that created our family, and the different ways we chose to honor that legacy. The financial burden of Mom's care took years to recover from. I'm still paying off some of the debt, still working extra shifts to rebuild my retirement savings. But I sleep well at night, knowing I gave our mother every day of life that medicine could provide. I gave her the chance to make memories with her granddaughter, to finish projects that mattered to her, to die surrounded by love rather than abandoned by greed. David, I assume, sleeps in his remodeled kitchen and wonders if the granite countertops were worth losing his mother's respect and his sister's relationship. But that's a question only he can answer. The hardest part isn't the money I spent or the years of debt ahead of me. It's knowing that when our mother needed us most, when she was vulnerable and scared and fighting for her life, one of her children looked at her and saw only a financial burden. It's knowing that David's last real conversation with Mom was him telling me she wasn't worth saving. But there's healing in this story, too. I learned that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day, especially when that choice costs you something. I learned that doing right by the people who matter most is worth any sacrifice. And I learned that sometimes the people who share your blood aren't the ones who share your values. Mom's letter wasn't just about jewelry or inheritance, it was about recognition, acknowledging that love is measured in actions, not words. That being family means showing up when it's hard, not just when it's convenient. That some things are worth more than money, and some people are worth everything. If you're facing a similar situation, if you have family members who see dollar signs where you see human dignity, remember this. You can't control other people's choices, but you can control your own. You can choose to be the person who stands by those who need you, even when others walk away. You can choose love over convenience, sacrifice over selfishness. And if you're the one who's been walking away, who's been choosing comfort over care, it's not too late to change course. It's not too late to be the family member your loved ones deserve. But don't wait too long. Time is the one thing you can't buy back, no matter how much money you save by not spending it on the people who matter most. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who prioritized money over care? Or maybe you've been the one who had to learn this lesson the hard way? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Sometimes the most painful experiences teach us the most valuable lessons about what really matters in life. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up when showing up is hard. And that's a choice we all get to make every single day.